Was Adolf Hitler a Christian? It's a simple enough question. You'd assume so, at least. But it seems to be a lot of confusion around that simple question. Doing a simple search of was Adolf Hitler a Christian, you'll find all kinds of conflicting sides and theories about Hitler's religion or his non-religion. I've come to find, when looking into people who are very passionate about proving Hitler was a Christian or a pagan or an atheist or anything else for that matter, usually the people have a vested interest. Usually the vested interest revolves around personal reasons for either disavowing or embracing Adolf Hitler as a figure of history and finding more ways that they're either completely opposite or more in tune with this historical figure. My interest in understanding what Adolf's religious beliefs were does not revolve around a personal desire to share or disavow his spiritual beliefs with mine, but rather I'm invested for historical accuracy, getting and understanding the best we can with what information we have. So let's look at said information. Usually when Christians who adore Hitler or atheists who abhor Hitler speak about Hitler's personal Christianity, they are typically quoting from early Hitler speeches to the public and verses from Hitler's book meant for the public, Mein Kampf. Now Hitler, like all men of his era, before his era and after his era, who quest for power, are very concerned with their image, and be that image physical or be it with what they're saying, they have to seem a certain way to the people. This goes from anything as simple as Hitler practicing poses and having his personal friend Heinrich Hoffmann and photographer as well, his personal photographer and friend Heinrich Hoffmann, snap pictures of him in different poses so Hitler can then re-examine them and see what he would, conjure up later that night during the speeches, what looked better and what sold it. Which Heinrich Hoffmann goes into detail in his memoirs, Hitler Was My Friend. Anything from practicing poses in pictures and re-evaluating them to, in the middle of practicing his speeches, striking poses as his valet / manservant / bodyguard Heinz Ling spoke about in his memoirs, With Hitler to the End, or something as simple as making sure everyone dressed a certain way, as once again mentioned by his valet in his memoirs, With Hitler to the End, about how Hitler was concerned about not only what he was wearing, but how if the people around him artistically fit together with what they were wearing. Which should be just common sense to any man in the public eye. We see there is a need, a desire to hone in on the most effective methods and images to present to the people. This goes hand in hand with what he's saying as well. He had to speak, as any politician does, as anyone who is trying to win the ear of the masses needs to do is to speak in a verbiage that is palatable to the masses. That is to say in modern day America, it would be silly to think someone can run for office and speak out against Christianity and have any chance of getting elected or getting close to being elected. The same could be said for early 1900s Germany. Germany was a Christian nation. You had to speak in a verbiage that the Christians would accept. So any criticisms specifically of the Christian doctrine itself, you could imagine would lead to no success at all and no growth in whoever that politician may be. Even the communists in Germany did not disavow God and Christianity as they had in Russia. So if we can understand, or at least come to the conclusion, public figures, public speakers, people however you may want to define them, or for whatever motivation that needs support from a mass of people, have to speak in a verbiage that is accepted, that is easily digestible by the people. And this is, in fact, not only what Hitler, but Napoleon, but Caesar, but everyone to standing presidents of the day spoke in. So if we cannot judge his personal religion through what he says to the masses, how can we come to any conclusion about what Adolf Hitler's personal spirituality revolved around? That would have to be A, through his own private words, and B, through the private words of his inner circle. The people who knew him, the people who were around him constantly, the people that took care of him, the people that served him, and the people he simply had around dinner often because he enjoyed their personality or their company, or they were just in the position to where they're always around him. Albert Speer, Hitler's chief architect, good friend, who did, it must be mentioned, after the war, have a completely different view of Hitler and seemed to be, his change in perception of his good friend Hitler seemed to be done for motivations to seem to come more from self-preservation than an epiphany that magically came after everything had went south. Whatever his motive may be, this is what Albert Speer says in his memoirs Inside the Third Reich. And this is Hitler speaking. You see, it has been our misfortune to have the wrong religion. Why didn't we have a religion of the Japanese, who regard sacrifice to the fatherland as the highest good? The Mohammedan religion, too, would have been much better, much more compatible to us than Christianity. Why did it have to be Christianity, with its meekness and flabbiness? Christa Schroeder, Hitler's personal secretary from 1933 to 45, says in her memoirs, the church was always a favorite topic. Hitler had no affiliation. He considered the Christian religion to be a hypocritical trap which had outlived its time. His religion was the law of nature. And Otto Dietrich, the chief press secretary, in his memoirs, The Hitler I Knew, says, he was sharply hostile to Christianity and the churches. Primitive Christianity, he declared, was the first Jewish communistic cell. Hitler was convinced that Christianity was outmoded and dying. He thought he could speed its death by systematic education of the German youth. We see a trend here. We at least have three in his inner circle speaking in detail about things that are very not flattering to Christianity. In a dinner conversation between Hitler and Walter Huell, a German diplomat and personal friend of Hitler. Over dinner this evening, a wonderful talk on the Roman Empire and its displacement by Christianity. Christianity has been one long act of deceit and contradiction. Christianity is the revenge of the wandering Jew. This is from David Irving's The Warpath, 1933 to 1939. We go on to Hitler's Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, as he wrote in his diaries in 1941. Hitler hates Christianity because it has crippled all that is noble in humanity. So we could definitely see a trend there. Now, not only has all the memoirs from Hitler's inner circle all had the same narrative of Hitler and Christianity, but no one has accused anyone no one that knew Hitler, rather, has accused any of the people in said memoirs of lying or blurring the vision of what Hitler's spiritual beliefs were. So they're not contested by anyone who knew Hitler. Any of the claims made in the numerous memoirs that all coincide with each other. Now, not only do they coincide with each other's memoirs, but they coincide with the controversial table talks from Hitler. Table talks was a collection of afternoon tea, dinner time conversations. From 41 to 44, when available, Martin Bormann had 2 secretaries in there to document the conversations. And this was to go, as Hitler spoke about once again in a couple of the memoirs, it's brought up. Hitler's plan was eventually, after the war, his plan was always changing, mind you, but one of his plans after the war, and after he was satisfied with his contributions to Germany, retiring and writing his memoirs. Well, these notes taken by Bormann, or Bormann's secretaries rather, would be vital to that. But as that never happened, so the originals signed by Bormann, witnessed by a few, David Irving one, at least reading the originals. So being now that the originals did bear Martin Bormann's signature, the accusation that the table talks were forgeries became a lot harder to prove because you have Martin Bormann's signature on these. So the narrative became, for the people who, for whatever reason, disliked what was said in table talks, the narrative became that Martin Bormann influenced what was said in there. By influenced, I mean he went out and changed and put words in Hitler's mouth, and that all the anti-Christian sentiment in table talks is because Martin Bormann was a diabolical person who wanted to insert his own views in there and completely change words of Hitler to serve the benefit of Bormann's beliefs, I guess, or whatever the argument may be. Now, when someone or some people make an accusation like that, it's a pretty serious accusation. You're changing all of history. It's taking a person who was who was a God-fearing Christian in the eyes of the people who are either atheists and want Hitler to be a Christian, or who are Christian and adore Hitler and want him to remain a Christian. They make the accusation that Martin Bormann changed history. They make the accusation that Martin Bormann was this diabolical figure who obviously must not have had too much loyalty or respect for Adolf Hitler, because he's willing to change his words and make Hitler appear as something he's not. Now, mind you, firstly, we already have all the people in Hitler's circle who wrote memoirs agreeing with, not only agreeing, but some of them even go conversation for conversation in their memoirs with conversations and table talks, but supporting the view that Hitler was not a Christian. All the people in his inner circle. So, which alone would have to be, a huge glaring sign that Martin Bormann was not just writing his own thoughts and putting Hitler's, mouth behind it. But while on the topic of Martin Bormann, let's see what some of the people in the inner circle had to say about him. Christa Schroeder, once again, Hitler's secretary, 33 to 45. Bormann was simply one of the most devoted and loyal of Hitler's vassals, who would often force through ruthlessly and sometimes brutally the orders and directives given by Hitler. He was neither hungry for power nor the gray eminence in Hitler's entourage. To my mind, he was one of the few National Socialists with clean hands, for he was incorruptible and came down on all corruption he discovered. This is Hitler speaking on Bormann, according to Schroeder. Where others need all day, Bormann does it for me in 2 hours. And he never forgets anything. Bormann's reports are so precisely formulated that I only need to say yes or no. If I tell him, remind me of this or that in 6 months, I can rest assured that he will do so. So we're already seeing a little trend there of the preciseness of Bormann, as attested by Hitler, and the loyalty of Bormann as attested to Schroeder. We go on from the memoirs, once again, of press secretary Otto Dietrich. Hitler trusted him right down to the end, speaking about Bormann, recognizing in Bormann a blindly obedient instrument who would pass on and execute all his commands without the slightest deviation. In Hitler's will, which bears Bormann's signature as witness, Hitler recommended him to the posterity as his most loyal comrade. And finally, from Heinrich Hoffmann, Hitler's personal photographer and personal friend, from his memoirs, in a conversation about a complaint issued to Hitler about orders given by Bormann, Hitler explains, "Get this quite through your mind. To win this war, I have a need of Bormann. The fact remains, one after another, everybody has failed in their implicit obedience to my commands. But Bormann, never. Everyone, I do not care who he may be, must understand clearly this one fact. Whoever is against Bormann is also against the state." What else could you say about a man's character as far as if you're going to question, his diligence to make sure he's accurately recording what's being said, and B, his loyalty. And then once again, common sense and logic will tell you if everyone in Hitler's circle saying one thing, and then you see Table Talks is enforcing what they're all saying, well, it's pretty much they're proving each other right, despite whatever theories or reservations someone might have about if a word was translated properly, or the general statement is the general statement, and it's quite clear if one only takes the time to research it for themselves. I mean, there's a plethora of books out there, not only on the Third Reich and World War II and the players involved, but on Hitler personally and the memoirs of many of the people around him. So and all one has to do is search through these and to come to their own conclusions. I mean, there's reoccurring trends. It's the claim is made some of the people that wrote their memoirs were untrustable or did an about face with Hitler, for their own expedience, but you can see general trends. You can definitely see general trends in what people are saying. Now on to Table Talks and what Hitler says about religion in Table Talks. And I think these are the best source of his mind and insight. And once again, when reading these and then reading the memoirs, you see they coincide with each other perfectly. To the T. Christianity, this is Hitler speaking now, from Table Talks. Christianity is rebellion against natural law, a protest against nature. Taken to its logical extreme, Christianity would mean the systematic cultivation of the human failure. The best thing is to let Christianity die a natural death. A slow death has something comforting about it. The dogma of Christianity gets worn away before the advances of science. Religion will have to make more and more concessions. Gradually the myths crumble. All that is left is to prove that in nature there is no frontier between the organic and inorganic. When understanding of the universe has become widespread, when the majority of men know that the stars are not sources of lights but worlds, perhaps inhabited worlds like ours, then the Christian doctrine will be convicted of absurdity. He continues, "The reason why the ancient world was so pure, light, and serene was that it knew nothing of the two great scourges, the pox and Christianity. Christianity is a prototype of Bolshevism, the mobilization by the Jew of the masses of slaves with the object of undermining society. Thus one understands that the healthy elements of the Roman world were proof against this doctrine. Yet Rome today allows itself to reproach Bolshevism for having destroyed the Christian churches, as if Christianity hadn't behaved in the same way towards the pagan temples." Now, those are just a few of the statements you'll find in Hitler's Table Talks in regards to Christianity, in regards to the religion of Christianity. Now that Hitler, now that it should be understood that Hitler indeed was not Christian, what was he? There are many out there. There are many gross over-exaggerations of the cultism and paganism in the Third Reich, which is a topic all in itself. But gross exaggerations as they are, Hitler indeed was not pagan, as he also says in Table Talks. It seems to me that nothing would be more foolish than to re-establish the worship of Wotan. Our old mythology had ceased to be viable when Christianity implanted itself. Nothing dies unless it is morbid, and the only way of getting rid of Christianity is to allow it die little by little. So we clearly do not want to place Christianity with some form of paganism or return to the old Nordic beliefs, the Scandinavian beliefs of Odin. But what is also accused of Hitler through the occult circles and the people that proclaim the Third Reich was anti-Christian or out to destroy Christians to give a new state religion, that couldn't be further from the truth. Once again, from Table Talks. If at this moment we were to eliminate the religions by force, the people would unanimously beseech us for a new form of worship. I envision the future, therefore, as follows. First of all, to each man his private creed. Superstition shall not lose its rights. So a true separation of church and state, essentially. What you believe, you believe. It has no effect. It has no place in the state house. Now, as far as Hitler, it's clear he had a belief in the force of nature, and that God, or the creator, or whatever you want to call it, expressed itself through the forces of nature. And so if anything, if he had to be classified, if his religious beliefs had to be classified underneath a term palatable to the people, it would have to be simply deism. He always had a belief in, providence had led them, fate has led him. Since a youth, he had that feeling and knowing, and which he shares in common with many of the greats throughout history. Many of the historical, the giants of history, Alexander's, Julius's, Napoleon's, the Khans, whoever. Most of them seem to have a premonition when they're young that they're going to be great people. And then what's that to be said, that a lot of people have premonitions they're going to be great and grow up to be plumbers. So it could go either way. But it's a lot of people who do achieve things, be they, be you consider them heroes or villains. I think greatness is greatness one way or another. Stalin or Gandhi. Now, not only with Hitler and his inner circle and his own words, do you have, clearly showing not a Christian and not even, doesn't even look at Christianity in a favorable light. But then you have, the people around him. I mean, he says a couple times in Table Talks, directly quoting here, as for the men close to me, who, like me, have escaped the clutches of the dogma, speaking about religion, you see with the people he surrounded himself by, they are not Christians, they're not pushing any Christian ideology, but I think mainly, and most tellingly, you see it in the SS. Now, if you were a Christian dictator in a country, and your goal was to enhance and promote Christianity, the last person you would put in charge of soldiers with guns would be a person like Heinrich Himmler. Himmler, which is very openly known how anti-Christian he was not only put in charge of soldiers with guns, but he was put in charge with the elite soldiers with guns. And not only the elite soldiers, but the elite of the society. The SS was, as Hitler spoke earlier, as he was quoted earlier in Table Talks, where he spoke of Christianity, or Christianity cultivating people of failure. The SS was put into place to cultivate people of success. So, with that in mind, Heinrich Himmler becomes the head of the organization that is made to cultivate the best of society you can. Now, much of the Nazi ideology was based around meritocracy. Now, there's a little bit of hypocrisy here when you look at the SS, because one of the fundamental rules to get in was a certain amount of generations of quote-unquote purity. So if that standard is met, then you have the opportunity to become a part of this elite club and be trained, and not only soldiery, but if you're a doctor, a mechanic, whatever field you're going into, you're going to be the cream of the crop. You're going to be the first option. The SS would essentially become the hierarchy, the new aristocracy of the new German society. Although, of course, opportunity existed for non-SS members. It's just the SS was prestigious. The SS had their own press, their own material intended for SS members specifically, unlike the regular newspapers that was meant for the mass of people. The higher ups could be a little more forward in their message and their beliefs and their cultivating of the people of the SS. And like I said, the mentality and the hostility, frankly, towards Christianity can be seen in numerous of the articles in the SS magazines. ThirdReichBooks.com has a shitload of information and books available. Books like SS Culture Volume 7 on Christianity, where it's, fundamentally just quoting from a line from one of the articles in the book entitled Marked, the Christian doctrine wants to break natural man. I mean, and this was meant for SS members to read. So once again, it's contradicting any notion of this Christian presence and eminence in Germany. I quote from the God and Folk booklet, which once again is a collection of articles intended for SS viewership. It is Christianity's fault that the Germans have become alien to themselves. And from elsewhere in the booklet, then the testaments will fall. Then a Christian era will come to an end. A new life will shape itself, a new faith that will be eternally young but eternally seeking. Because life is eternal, and because the ultimate thing eternally remains surmising and yearning to us. Whether we call the ultimate thing God, light, providence, or primal force is all the same. Important is only that we do not say Judah, rather Germany. So we see there Hitler's deism repeated, and also all throughout the articles, and especially the God and Folk booklet, comparisons to Christianity and Bolshevism as per Hitler as well. So you could actually see his own personal beliefs being dispersed in the literature to the party members. That sentiment's carried on from the SS all the way on down to the Hitler Youth. And lastly, more my personal opinion than anything else, it can't be proven by any kind of facts, but if you just look at the philosophers Hitler spoke about the most, Arthur Schopenhauer and Friedrich Nietzsche. He apparently was very fond of Schopenhauer, as he carried his works with him all throughout World War I, as brought up by Otto Dietrich in his memoirs. And Miss Schroeder in her memoirs recalls when Hitler was, page for page, was quoting Schopenhauer. So, and as well as his relationship with the Nietzsche family and many of his concepts and his beliefs of Nietzsche. Not only a Hitler fan of Nietzsche, but Mussolini as well, as Hitler in 1944 gave him for his birthday a very expensive bound edition of Nietzsche's collected works. But anyways, you see the criticisms of Christianity, Schopenhauer and Nietzsche. You see the same kind of criticisms with Hitler and Christianity. For example, or the earlier quoted from Table Talks, when Hitler spoke about that Christianity cultivated human failure, is hand in hand with Nietzsche's outlook of Christianity, rewarding the mediocre and penalizing the extraordinary. So in conclusion, my personal opinions tossed aside, you have Hitler's private words to his trusted inner circle. You have Hitler's trusted inner circle words made public. You have the policies of the SS. You have how the Hitler Youth were being brought into the world and educated. When you look at it, the only thing that was pro-Christian or even mentioned Christianity in a non-negative light was the public propaganda meant for the public masses. As one would be naive to think you could just come out and assault a religion of a country when you have people in Hitler's generation, most of the children, we could imagine a good over 90% of the children, German children, were raised being indoctrinated into Christianity in their youth. Then, in contrast to that, in National Socialist Germany, you have the children being educated and indoctrinated not into Christianity, but into the National Socialist political ideology and philosophy. So the finality of it all, from everything, the information provided, the policies, what was going on, it seems that not only was Adolf Hitler and much of the hierarchy of the Third Reich not Christian and not pro-Christian, but some of them even downright anti-Christian. And the Third Reich definitely was not a political philosophy built around enhancing, maintaining, or promoting Christianity. In fact, the opposite. They seem to have laid Christianity on his deathbed and started slowly smothering it